نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created men and women in order to worship Him. And by the very nature of mankind, they get attracted to certain things. There are certain type of people who would want to get something. This is called the quwa shahwiyah. And there are certain others who would like to repel the harm. They're more interested in avoiding any harm. So there are certain people who are more towards gaining some reward. This is called the quwa shahwiyah, the attraction towards certain things, the reward. So they are the people of carrots. On the other hand, you have people who are more inclined towards getting the removal of the harm, repulsion of the harm. So you would like to repel it, and this is called quwa ghadabiyah, the power of repelling things. The people of sticks, they want to avoid that. So for certain people this would work, for certain people that would work. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His wisdom knows it better that people have that mentality, and hence He would suggest people different things in different times. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in Quran three types of people. There are ashabul yameen, and there are ashabul shimal, and there are ashabul muqarrabun. Ashabul yameen are also called ashabul maymana, ashabul ayman, those who are on the right side, those who would get their reward on the day of judgment in their right hand, means the successful ones. And there are certain who will be unsuccessful because they did not heed to the quwwah of shahwiyya and ghadabiyya with regards to life hereafter. They rather went on to have that everything fulfilled for this world. So whatever they feel attracted to from their bestial self, from their lowly self, I like it and I want it, and I want it now. Those who had that attitude, they worked for dunya, and shaitan and nafs betrayed them, and they did not fulfill the purpose of their life, which was to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Allah says in Quran, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. Now, certain people would have certain inclinations and choices. It's like half glass full or empty. People have different views, and people are entitled for that different view. They would go for this or that. There's nothing right or wrong in this matter. In fact, an intelligent individual would understand that, and that is why they would never shun others or censure others for having a different view than themselves. If someone does that and start questioning someone else based on a legitimate difference of opinion, a legitimate way of looking at half glass empty or full, then that person himself hasn't got that much of intellectual maturity. Someone who has enough depth in their understanding and wisdom, they would know automatically that, you know what, yes, I consider it to be half empty, yet someone else may consider it half full, and I have my reasons which I believe are true, but others have their reasons as well, and there is a legitimate difference of opinion in this matter. For certain people, if they want to go for carrots and I want to avert the stick, it is not right for me to stick to one and censure others. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of every individual. And with the variation among people, He would give people different ideas, different incentives. So, incentives make people do certain work. Since we cannot see our life hereafter, we are in this world, it is very tempting to go for certain worldly things. It's like giving sweets to the kids. When they mature, they come to the point where they realize that worship itself, prayer itself is required out of me. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being my creator, has given me so much, deserves to be worshipped without me asking for anything. without any other incentive. This is just the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the people who would just do acts of worship not for any carrots, not to avert any sticks, but rather the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they are the highest of the high. They are called Ashabul Muqarrabun. They are the third categories. The right people of the right side, which is righteous people, people on the left side, which would not follow the the command and the purpose of life. And there are certain people who would just go ahead of all of them. So that when men on the right side is fulfilling or following what is supposed to do, but the incentive behind this is to gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to achieve Jannah, to run away from Jahannam. And this is why Rabia Basriya, rahmatullahi alayha, one of the pious lady of the past, she one day left out covering herself, holding a bucket of water and having fire in other hand. And people say, "Oh Rabia, where are you going? What are you doing? Why have you got water in one hand and fire in other?" She said, "I have seen people worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala either to gain Jannah, paradise, and all its blessing and bounties. And I've seen people who are worshipping Allah to save themselves from the fire of hell. I'm going out to extinguish the fire of hell with this water, and I would like to burn Jannah and all its bounties therein, so that the people worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not for covetousness for Jannah and for the abhorrence to Jahannam, aversion to Jahannam, rather for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, purely for the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deserved that worship." So this is Rabia. This is from Ashabul Muqarrabun, the elite of the elite. For them, that is perfectly fine. But we need to understand that there are certain people who are at a different stage in their learning and coming close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For them, it is extremely important to have some incentive. If you do not give that incentive to your children, and we've all done through our experience in our lives, our small children for school work, we give them some incentive. If you do that, I will give you this. That incentive, make that kid do some extra work rather than just playing all day long. This is the nature of children. So this is not about just age, but rather some people get stuck at that level and they always want to do something for Jannah. And that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala considers it to be an okay thing. It is a fine thing. One can go and do all the acts of worship, listen to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in order to achieve Jannah and all the blessings therein. That's perfectly fine. Human nature is being addressed here, and it is completely wise, and it's in fact it is much more knowledgeable of psyche of people. Obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created mankind, so he knows how important it is to incentivize them in order to save them from the clutches of shaitan and nafs. Otherwise they would end up following the wrong way. So this is a favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that type of individuals. And obviously, with that comes the test. Slowly and slowly, when they continue to grow up the ladder to the point that they understand the very foundation and the reason for their worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pure love, and that Allah is deserving to be worshipped, then they would ignore the bounties of Jannah, they would ignore the punishment of hellfire, like Rabia, like many others. So it is a part of maturity that we continue to grow maturer as we move on in our quest to yearn and love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in our yearning to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The more beloved we get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and closer to His love and affection, the more we get sorted out and we stop thinking about little things here and there, the fountains of honey the fountains of milk, the damsels in heavens. And that is why it is only mentioned in Quran in few places. You would not find the word hur, the women, the beautiful women there, except at very few places. Google it and find out. In fact, tell me, how many times do you think the word hur is mentioned in Quran? Less than half a dozen. Why is that? If it was the be all and the end all, it should have been a lot more. No, so this is not the be all and the end all. Rather, it is just a way of incentivizing certain men, certain people who get attracted to certain things. And this is just knowing their nature. It is catering for everyone. And remember, Quran is there from the day one to the end of time. It is not there only for certain people who are elite and intelligent enough to distinguish between this and that. They're not only for the Rabias of the time, the Hassans of the time, the Abu Hanifas of the time, but rather for every individual, every Zayd, Bakr, and Amr, every Khadija, Fatima, and Aisha, everyone who needs some help. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his divine wisdom help people out through those incentives, and as I said, they are much more of a value for those people who need that kick, who need that. Otherwise, they would not work. So when we continue to grow up, we do not look back and look down upon those people who are doing certain things for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in order to achieve Jannah or stay away from hellfire. This is a sign of imperfection. A perfect individual, those who continue to go up, like the Rabias of the time, when they come to the maturity, this is why Sayyidah Rabia, when she went to the highest of the high uh, levels, high levels of, coming close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then she stopped saying those things. It was at an earlier stage. It was when she was just be completely enthralled by that feeling of the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When she achieved that level and she matured further, she would not censure others. She would not then rebuke others for doing that, knowing that people are of different levels. So when we in our friends and families, when they start talking about this in light of why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions about these hurs, about the pleasure of Jannah, it looks very much, there should be a higher objective. We are criticizing that because we are unwise. We are not experienced enough. We have not matured enough to understand the need for a younger, someone who is junior, someone who is still struggling, still trying to grapple with the basic foundational principles and practices of Sharia. So until we come to that maturity, we would see it all. It's like father or the mother looking at a child and saying, "Why this kid is asking for a sweet when he's offering 2 rakat? Why is he asking for a toy when he has scored higher in the class?" So he's very, very, you know, low in his aspirations. He should have done something better. He should have lofty aspirations. It's actually not the fault of the kid, rather the fault of mother or father who question that, because they do not even understand the level of that individual, which means they're not wise enough, they have not matured enough, they're inexperienced, they've got lack of understanding, and they have got lack of appreciation and insight into their lack of understanding, unfortunately. So which is a very sad state of affair. We need to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created every individual differently, and they have different shades, and there are many among these groups, there are many subtypes and many different shades, and they all need to continue to work towards the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but through different ways. Some would like the carrots, some would do it for the version of sticks, And there are certain who would just do out of love. They want to do it. And that's a good level, but as long as they do not censure others, because these are all three good ways of coming towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for whatever reason they do. Obviously, one is better than the other two. The top one is the better than the other two, but it will only be better if the person at that height do not look down upon others. If they do, they have not even achieved that level yet, but they feel that way. It is just a delusion about them feeling that I am at that level and I am doing it only for for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they are doing it for houris and for this and for that in Jannah. So they are lowly. No, it's actually I have not even achieved the level that they have achieved, because I'm still looking at myself and I'm being happy with my own status. I am more arrogant without realization. So we need to work harder to overcome this big ego problem. May Allah give us insight into these and realize that Allah is the creator. Nothing can know better than Allah. No one can understand better than Allah. How could we ever think that Allah would have done something which might be off-putting to me because, oh, why He is doing that is only because I am so immature that I do not understand the depths there. A wise person would see that. May Allah give us tawfiq. قولوا قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.